2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, in our current status quo, media outlets have been giving us information or story that benefit one political party and ruin the other. By spreading lies and propaganda, they escape the grasp of responsibility just because they have the screen and a favor from their political affiliations. And we support transparency and the media outlets across the board. And that is why we, as the proposition team, are in full support of mandating that all media outlets disclose their political affiliations. And then moving on to our definitions as to how do we limit this? How do we mandate media outlets from disclosing their political information? So, as the government, we would force that media outlets tells to the public of what connections to their media has. If they fail to meet these requirements, we will not allow their media to allow to air on public network, public media mainstream, as to allow it to ensure that correct information and not propagandized information to be spread among all the viewers and listeners of the TV. And then moving on to our parameters, how far we are going to take this and what are the models we are going to use. So on the basis of we're going to use this model as a democratic nations. We with independent media outlets outside of the media government control, so that the media outlets doesn't directly connected to the government. The government doesn't have a control of their media outlets. For example, China has the control of all of their media, all of their social media, and it is and for another example, North Korea. So there's not a single independent media outlets to use this kinds of freedom. So we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a democratic nations with, of course, with political parties, with freedom, with elections and votings. For example, in Indonesia, in United States, in England. So we're going to talk in the regard of that. And then what are the actors? We're going to talk about in the government side of the debate, where we're going to make the government to mandate that all media outlets disclose their private political affiliations, as to limit what can the viewers and listeners have to what can the viewers and listeners receive their information, so to get the correct information and doesn't get propagandized, so to then falsely led to believe that this political party is better than that one because one media said so, even though that media outlets is actually in favor and supporting behind the public knowledge. So it is actually very unfair for the people that are being manipulated, you could say. And then the media outlets. What are media outlets? We're speaking on the basis of that media outlets are the one that independent. So we're not talking about, like I said, we're not talking about the government side of the. We're not talking about state-controlled media outlets. We're talking about an independent one, comes from an independent company, for example. So it's not controlled by any kinds of political party, not controlled by any kinds of governments outside or inside of the country's sphere. And then what are political affiliations? So political affiliations are the connections of what the media has onto a certain political party. So, for example, Metro TV have an affiliations to PDI, for example. So we want them to disclose that they have the affiliations, they have the connections. Their CEOs are talking to each other, and the stories that come to Metro TV are appointed and sent by the PDI to spread propaganda of how how their party is better, for example, and we do not allow that. And we do not want to allow the fake propaganda to allow without any kinds of the citizens, the public awareness. And then after reviewing all the definition parameters and actors, we want to move on to arguments. We have three arguments on why we propose this debate and on why we support this debate. First, it makes the viewers and listeners of the media more aware of propagandized content. Second, it will spread transparency across all the media mainstream. And then three, to protect our country's democracy. I will deliver two of our main arguments, and my second speaker will deliver the third one. So first, makes the viewers, listeners of the media more aware of propagandized content. By mandating that all media outlets disclose their political affiliations, the public will know, oh, this media outlet support this. If they give out information that support that certain political party, then we will know that it may be biased. But if we see from the other side of, for example, other media outlets that they also support their political opponents, then we will know that is actually correct information, so we can compare both media outlets of what is true and what is not, if one is propagandized or one is lies or one is a true fact. So it is to ensure that all the public, all the people knows what they're going to get, what kind of information is it valid, is it comes from a real sources. So we want to allow such transparency to occur. And then the second one, it will spread transparency across all the media mainstream. So by forcing media outlets to disclose their political affiliations, then all the public will know what kinds of informations that they want. We will know what any kinds of the fake news or propaganda that they want to send. And then moving on. Now they're going to say that this attacks media outlets' right to privacy. We don't agree with their perspective and say that it is a feeble argument. Because number one, it actually harms the perspective of the people to the political party that the media outlets is against. If you think that lying to a massive amount of people are their right, then it is a bogus and destructive claims to our society. And in conclusion, we want to allow fair democracies and limit the spread of propaganda across the board as to allow fair elections to occur. And that is why we are very proud to propose. Thank you.
Excellent. Good job, Reza. I'm so happy. You have spent 8 minutes, 6 seconds. Great. Okay, to respond to the argument, I'd like to call upon the leader of oppositions, the Prime Minister.
Can I ask before we start?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to POI?
Yeah, sure. Why not? You should. I'm still jet lagged, yeah?
Yeah, it's okay.
I'm so nervous.
Why? We should be
Kenapa
the
nggak
one who
dobrak? Well, I'm going to start my speech in 2, 1. Under the motion, this House would mandate that all media outlets should disclose their political affiliations. I didn't really catch the problems coming from the proposition bans. They simply come up here and say the benefits of disclosing the political affiliation in the very first place without explaining why it is really urgent to disclose the political affiliation based on the current situation in the status quo. As the opposition bench, we believe that it is enough to let media evolve naturally without disclosing their political affiliation in the very first place. Even if we believe that the potential to be biased to support a certain political parties, for us, that's totally okay. At least Compared to the proposal, we believe that our proposal at least a little bit smaller bias compared to the proposal. And we believe that if your goal or your objective is that to create better democracy for the sake of better or fairness democracy because of what's called to limit hidden agenda of the media. We believe that if we disclose their political affiliation, the worst scenario will be happen in their proposal. And I will explain later on why it's not justifiable to disclose the political affiliation. Now I'm going to respond to their harm. We believe there's a tendency for media to be biased, but by disclosing their affiliation, the the media will be even more biased to this intent. Because of what? They will literally, obviously announce their affiliation. So all the content, all the information, all the reports on this kind of the media, they will never ever put their role as media to be balanced, to be fair, to be informative. They will always report and also inform the society based on their affiliation, which is so dangerous for the democratic practice in our country, especially in any kinds of democratic nationalism agenda. And second of all, they assume that by disclosing this, they think that it will be easier for the society to mind and map to see the agenda of the media, the agenda of certain political party, but they forget to explain or to characterize the role of media in the democratic nationalist agenda. We believe that as the opposition, we don't want to delay, we don't want to ban their role as media. We want to force them to stay in their stance as a media, not to be forced to stand as the political party. Media is not a political party. Media is a tool of political party. Maybe the second speaker will say, "Oh, but there are so many political or politicians own the media." For us, that's totally okay. At least we have a little number of bias compared to your proposal as the proposition is in that. Now, come to their definition. We believe that they fail to define what actually the role of media. Let me clarify what actually the role of media. We believe that the role of media is informing, reporting, balanced information to the society, and then they have to give alternative perspective toward an issue. For example, let's say when we talk about the policy made by the government, for example, per se the government comes from the PDI Perjuangan, for example, and it is not healthy environments of media if the media will only post their information, also reporting the benefit or the goodness of the policy made by the leader because of their affiliation in toward the PDIP itself, which is really harm toward the role of the media, which is so dangerous for the democratic practice in our country, and we don't want this happen, and we still want to uphold the role of the media as the platform for everyone to report balanced information for the society. And second of all, they also fail to prove us about why then it is must for the political party to announce that we have our own media. What is so important? What is so significant reason behind this kind of division? And we believe that they disclosing definition, not how they disclose. Do it. They want to force. If they want to force media, all kinds of announce identity, announce affiliation, this is so harmful for the nation. And I will later on explain what types of harms that will be exist if we force the media to announce political affiliations in the democratic country. Now come to our stance. As the opposition, we don't want to disclose or we don't want to force our media. Why? Even if The second speaker will say, but how about some medias owned by the political party? We're totally okay. But we also still believe that there are some other alternative media which is not owned by the political party, which is under the private entities, for example, under the independent party. They are not coming from a certain affiliation. But if you force them to announce the affiliation, meaning that it is must for media to have the affiliation, which is not good for the media environment. But if we let them to grow naturally, even if the possibility of some media to be biased choosing a certain political party, for us that's totally okay. But at least we still have another control media that can be more independent compared to those who are suspected biased or affiliated with certain political parties. And for us, this condition much better than the proposal of the gentlemen. And second of all, we stands for staying in status quo. What should we do? We enhance the regulation. We keep forcing the media to always being independent, to always being transparent, to always being equal, to always being balanced in informing every single things, every single issues, every single reports on for the society. If you will say that, yeah, but you cannot control 100%. We admit that. But at least by keep consisting, forcing them to regulate every media, all media to be more independent, at least this is the control mechanism for the government to make sure the media will not 100% bias toward every single report they will given to the society. What's important? Because the society needs balanced information. First speaker firstly say that, hey, the society need balanced information, and they can also compare between one media to another or to other medias. We believe that they fail to explain how the society can compare and why the society have to compare when the media, all media disclose the political affiliation. Yes, maybe the second will say it eases the society to choose which one better, to compare. But remember, the role of media is not the same as the role of the political parties in this gentlemen. We believe that the role of media as the instruments for us to find the best solution, to find comparative analysis in order we can know which one better among the affiliation by giving alternative perspective from the media itself. And the second speaker of my team will further explain you about the harms if we let the government to disclose, to force every media to announce the political affiliation will be the extension for my second speaker. We proud to oppose. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, to respond to the argument, I would like to call upon the Deputy Prime Minister, disclose you.
Am I audible?
You are actually ready.
Okay. Going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So to honorable judges and my respected opening teams, let me first support what our first speaker has said, that we on the proposition team believe that transparency in the media is very important. People deserve to know the background of the information they receive, because without disclosure, audiences may be misled by hidden bias. And that is why we fully support the motion this House would mandate that all media outlets disclose their political affiliations. And now let me respond to what the opposition has or might claim before and later. They might argue that calling media to disclose their affiliations limits their freedom. But judges, this obviously not true, because we are not silencing the media, but for sure we are only arguing them to be honest about where they politically. And talking about freedom of speech must always comes with responsibility. I mean, if the media has the power to influence millions of people, especially the young generations, then it has the responsibility to be transparent, right? I mean, how do we believe, or how can we believe about the information they spread if we did not know about the transparency, right? Then it must be called like hoax, or it's just a fake news that they're made by their self. And the next one, the opposition might also say that people can be smart enough to judge the information based on their own. But I mean, let's talk and let's ask ourselves about one simple question: how can, or how will people judge fairly if they do not know the background of the information, right? They got, and the information they got from the media is not transparent. So with disclosure, people can be more informed and about their choices, and this it's the real meaning of democracy, judges, especially we in Indonesia, which is one of the most popular democratic countries. I mean, then how we as the most popular democratic countries didn't have the transparency, or didn't got enough transparency by the media, right? Now that I have responded to the opposition's might or has claimed later, let me continue with our team's case by adding new arguments. So my first and only argument is protecting the democracy. So why protecting the democracy? Judges, democracy is built on the idea that citizens make choices based on the truth, fairness, and mostly important is transparency. And because of that, we want those ideas to function. And of course, if we want those idea of transparency to function, we need a clear and transparent informations by the media. However, when media outlets hide their political affiliations, democracy becomes weak, of course, because voters are misled without they even realizing it. That for example, imagine a television channel that is really popular among the especially the younger generations who are easy to be manipulated. They are a famous television channel, and they secretly supports one political party. I mean, it only shows the positive stories about that parties and negative stories about the opponent parties. So people would just believe about it, and it is not objective and it is not neutral information, right? Because they only support one candidate, but we don't know because they do not give us transparency. In reality, it is not journalism. It is propaganda, just like what my first speaker had talked about before. And the problem that it is not only the news are biased by those television channels, but the bias is also invisible. I mean, if we already know and it is not invisible, then we can make our own choices or judgment, right? But here, the main problem is the bias is invisible, and we cannot clearly judge them just because we thought about it, right? Now, some might more argue that people can already guess which media that support which party, but I do think and we totally believe that it is not enough. A democracy should not depend on rumors, assumptions, or media literacy skills that not everyone has. For example, that is young voters, or we call Gen Z nowadays, they would not be able to choose or decide which one is hidden bias or which one support this and that, because we know that their literacy skills are not enough, and they are just too lazy to maybe talk about political issues or something because they don't really like to read those kind of informations, right? And in conclusion, judges, my first speaker already gave two strong reasons. First, disclosure makes people more aware of the media that they are consuming, and disclosure helps spreads real and honest informations, because with honest and real informations, we can totally decide maybe the qualified media that we can choose, rather than the media that we don't even know that if they are biased to these parties or another parties. And I also have added that disclosure protects democracy from secret propaganda, that it can rebuild trust between the media and the public. If they already know this media may be supporting these parties, then if they trust those parties or they are qualified enough to be trusted, they can support that media. We do not want to silence them, but we just need those transparency, because transparency is truly important for us. And also, it can encourage more balanced flow of information, just like my first speaker had mentioned before, that we can be more aware maybe about the information that we got from the media, because we know that they're not secretly supporting another parties. We know which parties they bias or they support, right? And the opposition might say that we do not explain why disclosure is truly needed, why it clearly judges our case is clear. When media outlets disclose their political affiliations, citizens become more aware and democracy is protected from hidden propaganda, just like what I mentioned before. Because we in Indonesia, we believe in democracy, right? Then why don't we use the idea of democracy that I mentioned before, just like fairness and transparency, if we're truly a democratic country. And with this closure, democracy becomes stronger and also more clear and qualified. And that is why we are fully supporting these motions, this House with mandate that all media outlets disclose their political affiliations. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have spent 7 minutes. Excellent. Good job. Remember preemptive, yeah, preemptive. If you add preemptive, you will have more times to speech, okay? Good job. Excellent. I think I need to reopen a new link ya, karena ini kayaknya udah nyambung.
Oke, oke.
Oke, kita matikan dulu yang ini ya. Dasar miskin limitasi. Sorry. Gimana sih caranya? Oh
Kedua.
ya. Aku end dulu. Ya.